At a luxury clinic, a racist doctor mocks a pregnant black woman and accuses her of theft. She doesn't know her patient is a decorated combat veteran, and that her husband, a military lawyer, is on his way. It was a warm spring morning in Atlanta, the kind where the air feels soft and life hums with quiet movement. The Eastbrook Women's Medical Center stood like a marble monument to wealth, all glass panels and polished stone. Inside, the air conditioning whispered over leather chairs and flower arrangements that looked too perfect to be real. Anya Williams, 40 years old and 6 months pregnant, sat in one of those chairs. She wore a simple blue maternity dress, clean and practical, but a world away from the designer labels that adorned the other women in the lobby. Her posture was erect, a subtle, ingrained discipline that contrasted with the fatigue in her eyes. One hand rested protectively over her round belly, a silent conversation with the new life she carried. Her other hand lay still in her lap, a model of calm she didn't fully feel. As a retired Army sergeant and former combat medic, Anya was trained to assess environments. She registered the details of this place not as a patient, but as a soldier. The exits were clear. The staff-to-patient ratio was low. The atmosphere was sterile, but not in a medical sense. It was emotionally sterile, cold. A receptionist looked up from her desk, her gaze flicking over Anya's simple dress and brown skin before dismissing her entirely. Another couple, white and dripping with understated luxury, chose to stand rather than take the seat next to her. Anya took a slow, deep breath, a technique she'd mastered in the dusty chaos of a forward operating base. Control your breathing, control the situation. The mantra felt different here, in this temple of civilian privilege. She gently rubbed her stomach. Her husband, Major Ethan Williams, was on his way. A last-minute briefing at the JAG office had delayed him. He'd promised he would rush. Anya believed him. Ethan always kept his word. Still, a quiet sting of loneliness pricked at her. This was supposed to be their first 4D scan, a milestone. Now, she was navigating this silent battlefield alone, feeling more exposed than she ever had in uniform. Anya had barely finished scrolling through an article on her phone when her name was called. A nurse stood in the doorway, her expression a blank mask of professional indifference. The hallway was immaculate, lined with framed portraits of smiling white mothers and their newborns. For a fleeting moment, Anya wondered if a woman who looked like her had ever graced these walls. The examination room smelled of antiseptic and lavender. Anya sat on the edge of the paper-covered bed, her military training warring with the discomfort of pregnancy. She smoothed her dress, trying to quiet the nervous flutter in her stomach. The door opened with a soft click, and Dr. Lindsay Halbert entered. White coat, perfect posture, blonde hair in a tight bun, and cold, gray eyes. She didn't greet Anya. She didn't smile. She simply stared, her gaze drifting down Anya's body not with a physician's eye, but with a critic's judgment. The silence stretched, becoming personal. "So, you're Anya Williams?" Dr. Halbert finally said, her voice dipped in condescension. Anya straightened her back. "Yes. Good morning. I believe we're doing the 4D scan today." Dr. Halbert's eyes narrowed. "You came alone," she stated flatly, as if it were an accusation. "My husband had an emergency at work. He's on his way." A smirk ghosted across the doctor's lips. "Of course," she murmured, turning toward the counter. Her tone then shifted, becoming sharp and purposefully cruel. "Let me guess. You're not quite sure who the father is? Or maybe he decided this morning that the responsibility was too much. It's a typical pattern." Anya's breath hitched. "Excuse me." The doctor turned back, her face a mask of scorn. "Look, I don't know what kind of place you think this is. This isn't some public clinic funded by taxpayers. This is a specialized facility for expectant mothers who care about their child's future. Not for women who show up unaccompanied, looking like they just got off a bus." Anya stood up slowly, her fists clenching. "I have an appointment. I am a patient. You will speak to me with respect. You people are always demanding respect when you want something, Dr. Halbert hissed, stepping closer. Then you bring nothing but drama and disruption. Not today. Not in my facility. I'm leaving, Anya said, her voice shaking with a fury she fought to control. I don't have to tolerate this. Oh, you're not going anywhere just yet, the doctor sneered. She glanced at the counter. My watch. My Cartier. Platinum band. I said it right here this morning. She turned slowly, her eyes locking on Anya. And now, it's gone. The accusation hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Before Anya could even process the lie, Dr. Halbert was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. Panic, cold and sharp, tried to rise in Anya's throat, but years of training kicked in. Assess, don't react. But this wasn't a combat zone, it was a checkup. The enemy wasn't an insurgent, it was a doctor. Footsteps echoed down the hall, measured and heavy. 2 security officers entered without knocking. Both were white, one older and weary, the other younger and bulkier, chewing gum with a slow, contemptuous rhythm. Ma'am, the older one began, his tone clipped. Dr. Halbert reported a missing item. You were the only other person in the room. You'll need to come with us. I haven't taken anything, Anya said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. We'll sort that out downstairs, the younger one cut in, already stepping forward. I am pregnant, she stated, her hand instinctively covering her belly. I am a patient here. I'd like to speak to my husband. You'll have your chance, the older officer muttered. After we're done. The pressure of their presence was a physical force, leaving her no room to argue. They escorted her through back corridors, past janitorial closets and locked cabinets, the air thick with the smell of bleach. They led her to a small, windowless security room lit by a single flickering fluorescent panel. A metal desk and a hard plastic chair bolted to the floor were the only furniture. Sit, the younger one ordered. Anya hesitated, then slowly sat, her training battling the primal fear of a mother protecting her child. She was calm, but her mind was racing, noting their names from their badges, the lack of visible cameras in the room, the single point of entry. Please, I need to call my husband, she said quietly. Phone, the younger one barked, holding out his hand. You have no right. Hand it over, he repeated, stepping closer. Reluctantly, Anya pulled her phone from her bag. He snatched it, turned it off, and locked it in a desk drawer. We're holding it until this is resolved. You are not under arrest, the older one said with practiced indifference. But you are being detained for investigation. You need to cooperate. Detained for what? Anya's voice was low, but laced with steel. Where is your proof? This is illegal. The younger officer crossed his arms, a sneer twisting his lips. Lady, save the performance. You want sympathy, you're in the wrong place. They weren't questioning her. They were holding her. Isolating her. Because they could. Minutes crawled by, each one a small eternity. The guard stood by the door, ignoring her. The fluorescent light buzzed, a nagging, hostile sound. Anya closed her eyes, shutting out the bleak room, shutting out the guard's smug faces. She didn't let fear take root. Instead, she let her training take over. She focused on her breathing, a slow, 4-count inhale, a 4-count hold, a 4-count exhale. Her mind drifted away from the cold plastic chair and the stale air. It went back to a dusty field in a country thousands of miles away, the day she had taken her oath. I, Anya Williams, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The words echoed in her memory, not as a rote recitation, but as a living creed. She had sworn to bear true faith and allegiance. She had faced foreign enemies. Now, here, in the country she had served, she was facing a domestic one, an enemy of prejudice, of arrogance, of casual cruelty. A hand on her belly, she made a new vow, a silent one to the life growing inside her. I face down threats in a war zone to protect my brothers and sisters in arms. I will not be broken in a small, gray room by small-minded men. I will not let their poison touch you. She thought of Ethan, of his unwavering belief in the law and in justice. He would come. And when he did, this would end. The quiet resolve of a soldier settled over her, a shield stronger than any wall. She had sworn an oath. She would not falter. At the front desk of the Eastbrook Women's Medical Center, Major Ethan Williams approached with a measured pace that clicked softly on the marble floor. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, but the ramrod straightness of his back and the controlled intensity in his eyes belonged to a soldier. He was a man accustomed to command, not to making requests. "Good morning," he said to the young blonde receptionist, his voice deep and calm, yet laced with an authority that made her look up instantly. "I'm here for my wife, Anya Williams. She had a 10:30 appointment with Dr. Halbert." The receptionist blinked, her fingers freezing over her keyboard. One moment, sir. Let me check." Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "Please do." She tapped nervously, her professional composure cracking under the weight of his stare. "It says, she's not currently in the exam room." "Then where is she?" The question was quiet, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. "Sir, there was a situation," the receptionist stammered, avoiding his eyes. "Security was notified. I believe she's downstairs." "What situation?" Ethan's voice remained level, but it was no longer a question. It was a demand for information. I think there was a misunderstanding about a missing item. Dr. Halbert, she. Ethan leaned forward just slightly, a minimal movement that carried maximum weight. "Take me to my wife. Now. I'll get the floor manager," she said, her face paling as she started to stand. "That won't be necessary." Ethan reached into his jacket, pulled out a slim leather wallet, and opened it. Inside was not a police badge, but a military identification card. The receptionist's eyes widened at the photograph of a man in full army dress uniform, his rank and name clearly visible. Major Ethan Williams, United States Army. "Now, for the last time, where is the security office?" She pointed with a trembling finger. "Down that corridor, past the staff elevators, first door on the left." Without another word, Ethan turned and walked. He did not run. He did not need to. Every sharp, unwavering stride was a promise that someone was about to learn they had made a grave, irreversible error. Ethan pushed open the gray, unmarked door and stepped into the cramped security room. The sight that met him sent a jolt of ice-cold fury through his veins. His wife, a decorated sergeant of the United States Army, sat rigid in a chair, her hands resting on her pregnant belly. Her expression was a mixture of defiance and pain. Two guards stood nearby, startled by his sudden intrusion. "Anya," he said, his voice soft for her alone. Her head snapped up, a gasp of relief escaping her lips. "Ethan." He was at her side in an instant, a hand on her shoulder. "I'm here. It's over now." He kissed her forehead, then turned to the guards. His voice dropped, becoming flat and dangerous. "I want your names and badge numbers. I want the name of the individual who ordered this detainment. And you have 60 seconds to explain why my wife, a pregnant patient in this facility, is being held in a storage closet." The older guard stammered, "Sir, this is just protocol. There was a report of a theft." "A report is not evidence," Ethan interrupted coolly. He looked around the room. No cameras. No legal counsel. Her personal property confiscated. You haven't been following protocol. You've been engaging in unlawful detainment. He pulled out his wallet again, showing them the military ID. Major Ethan Williams, United States Army, Judge Advocate General's Corps. You are speaking to a military lawyer. Every word you say from this point on can and will be used in the official complaint I am filing with the State Licensing Board and the civil litigation that will follow. The younger guard's jaw went slack. The color drained from the older one's face. Dr. Halbert, who had been summoned, appeared in the doorway, her expression arrogant. What is going on here? Who are you? He's my husband, Anya said, her voice finding its strength. Ethan didn't spare the doctor a glance. He addressed the guards. I want to see all surveillance footage from the hallway outside exam room 3B for the last hour. Now. We're not authorized. You are now, Ethan commanded, his voice echoing with the authority of a field-grade officer. Shaking, the older guard complied, cueing the footage on an outdated monitor. The grainy video played. It showed Anya entering and leaving the room, never once approaching the counter where the watch was. Then, it showed Dr. Halbert exiting, touching her own wrist as if just noticing something was missing. Ethan pointed. Freeze it. Rewind 30 seconds. Zoom in on the counter as she leaves. The image sharpened. There, next to a box of tissues, sat a gleaming silver watch. She had left it behind. The room went silent, the only sound the hum of the light and Dr. Halbert's sharp intake of breath. The clinic's conference room was a space of forced apologies and panicked damage control. The board chair, two other executives, and a visibly shaken Dr. Halbert sat on one side of a long glass table. Anya and Ethan sat opposite them. Ethan had placed a thin file on the table, its contents a silent threat. We have reviewed the footage, Major Williams, the chairman began, his voice cracking slightly. This is a deeply regrettable incident. We offer our sincerest apologies. Ethan's face was unreadable. An apology is a start. It is not a solution. He tapped the file. My wife was subjected to racist and defamatory insults. She was falsely accused of a crime, illegally detained, and denied her right to communication, causing severe emotional distress to both her and our unborn child. This wasn't an incident. It was a systemic failure enabled by a culture of prejudice that you, Dr. Halbert, seemed to champion. The doctor scoffed. This is absurd. I had reason to suspect. You had a reason to assume, Ethan cut in coldly. Based on the color of her skin and the simplicity of her clothes. You saw a black woman, alone, and your bigotry filled in the rest. Then Anya spoke, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of the room. She looked directly at Dr. Halbert. Your oath as a physician is, first, do no harm. I am also bound by an oath. As a combat medic, my creed was to provide aid and comfort to the wounded, under any circumstances, to preserve life. I upheld my creed on the battlefield. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today, in this room, you violated your oath. And you insulted mine. The statement landed with the force of a physical blow. Dr. Halbert shrank back in her chair, all her arrogance gone, replaced by the stark, ugly truth of her actions. The board members stared at their hands, at the table, anywhere but at the pregnant veteran whose honor they had allowed to be trampled. Ethan leaned back, his point made more powerfully by his wife's quiet dignity than any legal argument he could have constructed. Justice, in that moment, was not about shouting. It was about the devastating clarity of truth. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift. Dr. Halbert was placed on indefinite leave, her career in tatters. The Eastbrook Clinic, facing a massive lawsuit and a public relations nightmare, issued a formal public apology. More importantly, they announced a new partnership with the local Department of Veterans Affairs to implement mandatory training for all staff on providing culturally competent and respectful care to veteran patients, with a special focus on women and minorities. Days later, Anya and Ethan stood on the sunlit sidewalk outside the clinic. A car waited for them, but they weren't in a hurry. The air felt cleaner now, lighter. Anya looked up at her husband, a soft smile on her lips. "You fought for 2 people today, soldier," Ethan said, his voice filled with a quiet pride that was more meaningful than any medal. He gently touched her stomach. Anya placed her hand over his. "No, Ethan," she corrected him softly, looking from her belly to the endless blue sky. "Free. Me, our child, and this invisible uniform." They stood together for a moment longer, a military family that had faced a different kind of battle on home soil and won. Their fight was a reminder that true respect for those who serve isn't about yellow ribbons or bumper stickers, it's about seeing the full humanity and honor of every veteran, especially those whose sacrifices are too often unseen, and whose dignity is too easily challenged.